Hey everyone, before we get to today's shows, I just want to ask you for your support. The UCAN Foundation has partnered with MoveOn.org to launch a petition that demands that Netflix and other reality shows put a disclaimer on the front of all unscripted shows. And that disclaimer says that all episodes are for entertainment purposes only, and any content can be edited, manipulated, and presented in any other way for storyline purposes. So please, if you can, check out the link in the description right here. Go add your name to support, and let's get this petition out to Netflix and start making some real change in the industry. Thank you for your support, and thank you for your signature. Now, let's enjoy the show.
I am a survivor of childhood sexual abuse. And when that happened, I, for a while, wanted to be somebody who fought the bad guys. I originally went to school to study criminology. And as soon as I really got into that, I realized this is too intense. I'm too angry at the bad guys. I need to help the people who were hurt by the bad guys. So I then switched to therapy and knew that I wanted to be an advocate for sexual abuse survivors.
Are you going through life blind? This is Eyes Wide Open with Nick Thompson. On this podcast, we share knowledge and stories that build human connection while elevating stigmatized societal issues such as mental health, holistic wellness, culture, free speech, and more. All to ensure we show up in the world with our eyes wide open. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Eyes Wide Open. This episode today is a doozy. It's one I've been wanting to record for a while. But before we get into that, I have an ask of you. Can you please like and subscribe if you enjoy this show? You can do that on YouTube. You can do that through whatever podcast platform you listen to. I also encourage you and ask for your support by leaving a review if that's something that you have time to do, because all of those things help the show and the algorithm and help us reach more folks. Today, we have Sarah Rice, who you may recognize from her 9 appearances on The Challenge and as a cast member of The Real World in Brooklyn back in the late 2000s. Sarah is a registered associate marriage and family therapist, which in our interviews, I incorrectly called her a licensed therapist. She's not there yet, but she will be soon. She's completing all of her requirements. But she also hosts several podcasts, including the Brain Candy podcast. And I want to have Sarah on because a lot of people have been trying to get us connected for a while since starting the UCAN Foundation, the Unscripted Cast Advocacy Network. And Sarah really changed her career path and her aspirations when she decided a few years ago that she was going to go back to school and get her master's in marriage and family therapist because she wants to help people. She understands and experienced the negative impacts that these reality TV shows can have on an individual. And she wanted to be able to support people with what they deserve and they should have after they go on these shows. So Sarah and I getting together, we have a really fun conversation here about reality TV, what her experiences were, some of the changes that we want to see in the industry. And all of this is so that when you go on a reality show, or someone you know goes on a reality show, or someone you enjoy or don't enjoy was on a reality show, whether that's personally or through the internet, you can look at the entire situation with your eyes wide open. Today, we have Sarah Rice as our guest on the show. Sarah's a licensed marriage and family therapist. She's the host of 3 podcasts, including the Brain Candy podcast. You may recognize her from several reality shows, including, just learned, 9 seasons on The Challenge and The Real World Brooklyn. Sarah, we have a lot to talk about. Thanks for coming on.
Yes. So many years on reality television. Basically all of my 20s.
That's insane. I don't know. Yeah. I mean, I'm dying to know how you survived it because I'm barely keeping my head afloat after 1 season on one show. So I applaud you, I guess, for keeping.
Yeah, thanks.
Sanity.
You know, I will say that I feel like I have a unique, background that helped me survive it. Both of my parents were in the film industry. My mom was a wardrobe stylist and my dad was an art director. So I grew up as a kid on set. So
That's cool.
I was in commercials when I was little. It was just like, oh, there's a kid. Let's throw her in the Jergens commercial. We need an extra. Like it was like that. It wasn't like I was like a child actor or anything, but it's like when your parents do it, you do it. So it felt like I knew exactly what to do to get myself cast on reality television. And yeah, it felt almost like normal to be on camera in that world for so long.
I can see how that would sort of impact you and prep you in a way. Did you have any aspirations when you were on those sets to be a performer or get on the crew side of things?
No, I worked for a little while as a makeup artist and as an assistant wardrobe stylist
Oh,
with my
nice.
mom, and every now and then like a PA when, but I was like 15, 16, 17 doing this, like not
That's
real
awesome.
job stuff. And
Still
then,
awesome though.
yeah, it
Like,
was really cool.
do you know,
And
I wanted to be in the film industry and I couldn't get a freaking PA job like
Right.
with a degree. So
yeah,
good
because
for
people
you.
like me, whose parent is like mom's like hanging out in, like the glam trailer is like, she needs a job for summer. Sure. Hire her. And here, yeah. So I did have it was something that I was already familiar with. And I also was aware of how this was not accurate, an accurate portrayal of real life. Like me, whose parent is like, I knew that we were selling stuff. I knew I'm selling myself in a way. I knew I'm selling my personality. I knew how to, when I went to the open casting, I knew how to be engaging and ask questions, but not be overpowering, and be gregarious and outgoing, but not like, take over. So
Right.
I almost feel like I had, like, I
You were
didn't cheat to
trained.
get there, but I had the background. I had the necessary training to walk right in, I guess.
So my favorite question asking, what did you want to be growing up? And then what led you to walk into that first audition?
Okay, so I had experienced trauma growing up. I am a survivor of childhood sexual abuse. And when that happened, I, for a while, wanted to be somebody who fought the bad guys. I originally went to school to study criminology. And as soon as I really got into that, I realized this is too intense. I'm too angry at the bad guys. I need to help the people who were hurt by the bad guys. So I then switched to therapy and knew that I wanted to be an advocate for sexual abuse survivors. And that is, I think, what really landed me on reality television. Is at the time when I was cast on the show, on my first season of The Real World, I had jet black hair, tons of piercings. I'm covered in tattoos. I do not, and this was a time where no one with tattoos was like on television.
Oh, you'd have to cover them to get a job.
For sure.
Yeah.
Totally. That's what they were like. This was not what you see on any television show. And, I, well, now I was going to say, well, maybe you see it on like Rock of Love and like a bunch of MTV shows. So maybe I'm incorrect with that. As soon as I said it, I was like, that's not true. MTV is the exact place where you would have all those tattoos. But I will say that it kind of was one of those, the book doesn't match the cover situations where people were like, oh, you probably are like a hairdresser or work at a bar or something like that. And I'm like, no, actually, I'm a camp counselor. I work as a peer counselor for children who are survivors of sexual abuse, and I want to be an advocate. And they're like, what? That doesn't match what you look like. And so I think that really helped me.
What a different
land on
time
the
that
season.
was.
Yes. We were a very interesting season of The Real World, and they were very open about this. So my season aired at the same time Jersey Shore was airing, and it was a big.
Was that like 2009, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And it was a big change of direction for reality TV, where before there were a lot of show, like original Real World were like real people, real stories. We had Pedro, who was like the first person who was open about being somebody diagnosed with HIV. And we had wonderful representatives from many different communities and groups and backgrounds. And it was great. And then Jersey Shore came, and they realized, oh, people love watching people fucking fight. And that's great television. And I remember the producers of MTV told us, our season is an experiment. They're going to put 7 people together, which actually ended up being 8. We had the surprise 8 cast member who were all advocates, who were all fighting for a cause, who were all like social justice, like, people trying to do good things. And each of us had our own individual jobs, where I was working doing like art. I can't call it art therapy because it definitely was not art therapy, but art programs and things that were rooted in therapeutic techniques. I'll say that now. In the LGBTQ center in New York. And so we were all doing all these projects that were like really like activists in the community. And then the next season was Cancun. And they were like, let's see which one gets more ratings. I will let you guess who got more ratings, the boring social advocates or the people partying in Cancun.
As soon as you said Cancun, I was like, well, they're drinking from the moment they wake up until the moment they pass out. So yeah, that's probably the one that would have the most drama and be the most eccentric.
And we barely drank and nobody hooked up and we didn't even go in the hot tub. Like, we were so boring. My season, this is hilarious. They do not have books as decoration in the house anymore because we actually read them.
I knew you were going to say that.
They were like, we didn't know you guys would read the books. We just put them in there for decoration. And they were like, you guys are boring on TV. So they took away our cards. They were like, you're not allowed to read anymore. What? That was boring.
They don't want you, and they don't want you thinking too much either on those shows.
Exactly. Oh, and then they're like, wow, you're sleeping a lot. Are you depressed? I'm like, no, I'm bored as fuck. There's nothing to do. And you won't let me read.
What did you guys, like, how did they keep you guys? They kept you in that house, right?
Yes.
Like you couldn't leave.
We were in New York and they wouldn't even let us use public transportation because you couldn't film on there. It was right after, not right after 9/11, but close enough to where they were not allowing any sort of filming, anything like that on any MTA, that we were very limited to where we could go. And on any reality show, anytime they go to any locations, that location has to be cleared days in advance. They have to go there before. You have to call the group. And a lot of people, especially we were in Brooklyn, they didn't want us there. Brooklyn. No. Yeah, right. They were like, no. It was just when like Williamsburg was coming up and they're like, we hate everything that's happening in Brooklyn. We do not want you here.
That's hilarious. And not surprising. Brooklyn doesn't mess around. They got no time for that.
Yeah. But man, it feels like a million years ago, but.
Well, it might as well have been. It's 13, 14 years ago now.
Yeah. A whole lifetime ago. And then so many challenges in between. So after the Real World, I immediately started doing the Challenge competitive show and never really stopped for the next like 10 years or so. I went to school in between and worked on my undergrad, and then I got accepted into my grad program. I found out while I was on my very last season of the Challenge.
Oh, when was that? That was end of 2015, 2016. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's when you got accepted into your graduate program, you said?
Yes.
That's cool. That's
very
cool. And then that was 2 years plus some.
Yeah, it was about 2.5, 3 years. And then many years of collecting all of my hours and before getting licensed. And yeah, it takes a long time. In California, you need 3,000 hours.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Holy cow.
Yes.
That is a lot. And is that supervised hours?
Yes, supervised hours. And my first year of being a therapist was in the pandemic. I became a therapist in December and I started seeing clients right when we went into lockdown.
Wow. So that had to be interesting because I can imagine that. I know during COVID, like, the clientele expanded to pretty much everybody.
Everybody. Yeah. Yeah. I was busy.
Yeah. My therapist was like, I have like, I think she did 30 people at one point. Yeah. I'm like, what?
And then my clients are asking me, they're like, oh my, what do we do? And I'm like, I don't know. What? You got anything for me? Like, let's just brainstorm some shit because I have no idea. Like this was not in any of the books I read.
I can't even. And the whole isolation and everybody developing these new like mental health challenges that they've never experienced before, and all while you're like can't leave your house, you got to, social distance when you do, and you can't see your families like you were.
Isn't that when I watched
time.
your show?
Mine was 2022.
Okay, so a little bit. Yeah. You were like on that right after that. Yeah,
but when we were filming, it was like in the brunt of it because it was early 2021, early mid 2021.
That must have been crazy to film during all that. How weird.
My God, the protocols, all of that stuff. It's brutal. So what prompted you to go back to school to get your become a therapist?
Well, I knew it was if I really wanted to help people in the way that I think would make the most impact and have the lasting result, I had to get my license. And I really love the work that I do as a therapist. I absolutely love creating that safe space that is so unique where people can feel validated and feel like, they have somebody in their corner helping them work towards goals. And it's like such a unique relationship that we really don't have anywhere else. And then when I was in grad school and in my research methods class, we had the option of choosing what we wanted to research. And I remember meeting with the director of my program and kind of spitballing this idea I had of researching the impact of reality television on participants. And I was very shy about sharing this because I thought I was going to get the response of, what do reality television people need help for? They signed up for it. They know what they signed the contracts. They know what they're asking for, blah, blah, blah. Who needs to help them? And when you see all the other, groups, like I do a lot of work with the military and sexual assault training and response training in the military. And so I saw the other groups that were so big that I felt really also needed like somebody to specialize in and work with. And so I felt like, man, this is such like a niche group and such a, maybe to, I don't know, the average person, a very small group that like, is it crazy to specialize in this? And I got the exact opposite response from the program. They were like, this is so important. You should definitely do this. Nobody's researching this. You will be the one who there. And when do you get a therapist who is actually on reality TV? Like that's not something. I remember there was a woman who, and what really solidified my decision, there was a story I heard from a woman who was on The Real World years ago. And she went to therapy and, her therapist was a little older, like many of them are. And she tried to talk to her about her experience. And she said, yeah, I did this crazy thing like years ago where like I was on TV and these cameras followed me everywhere. And I'm not kidding. The therapist said to her, do you see the cameras now? And I was like,
she thought she went.
Yeah. She was like, she must be hallucinating it because she, like, this therapist didn't have an understanding of what reality television even was. I remember when I came back from my show and I tried to explain to my wonderful, amazing, but 65-year-old therapist that I was like just lost a bunch of money and was screwed over on reality television. She like couldn't understand. She was like, well, what is this show? Where can I was like, oh, for fuck's sake, I'm not going to spend an hour, like 45 minutes of my 50-minute session explaining to you what reality television is and like Googling it, giving you a history lesson. So I did get the backup from my professors and from the director of my program that this is something worth studying and worth researching. And so I did that. I did a meta-analysis of the effects of reality television on its participants. The number of people from, I think the years I looked up were like 2004 to 2017 were the numbers that I had.
Oh, wow.
And the amount of participants and the suicide rates that were significantly higher than the national average. There were, I think I actually have the numbers here because I think this is interesting to even know.
I totally agree. What's funny is I didn't know you did that. Someone reached out to me through the foundation wanting to do something very similar.
It is very hard, and there is not a lot of research on it. The where I found the most helpful information was actually in media law and ethics courses.
Okay.
There were some studies done by media law and ethics courses. There was a Swedish study that was done that concluded it is unethical to even have reality shows because of their effects on people. That was an actual study that was done. I have the article pulled up. It's called The Dark Side of Reality Television. It's by somebody with the last name Mast, that was done in 2016, and it's called The Professional Ethics and the Treatment of Reality Show Participants. And he concluded that it violated basic human values such as respect for dignity, integrity, and truth. And
that's what I've been saying.
International Journal of Communications, from the study that was done. That was the only published study that I could find. There have been a few more, but this is something that goes
it's systemic.
Yeah, it's
systemic.
Swept under the rug, and it's looked at as like, oh, this is entertainment, but it is not that to the people who are participating, and it is not something that participants are even able to comprehend how it will affect them and change their life. We cannot. They didn't even have Twitter and all that when I went on my first reality television show, and now all these shows are now in streaming, and people who did it years ago are all of a sudden adults now with children and having what dumbass shit they did when they were in their 20s replayed, and they're making $0, only losing money and losing. It's cuckoo crazy to me.
It's so crazy. And, I have a friend who I had on the show, Alyssa Barmundi. She was on Married at First Sight in Australia. They just dropped it here on Lifetime in North America, and they didn't tell anyone on the cast. So they're getting the influx of all the hate and all the cruelty all over again. And you can't prepare for that. I'm not as much anymore. I used to be very confident, and I used to think to myself, I don't really care what any of these people think about me. They don't know me. They have no idea what my life was like. They had no idea what my relationship or marriage was actually like. So why would I care? And I kind of kept that mindset, and I stick with it most of the time. I genuinely don't, but sometimes it does get to you when you're, especially when you're misrepresented.
Are not supposed to. We are not designed to consider the criticism of hundreds and thousands. We are absolutely not designed that way. There's a British anthropologist named Robin Dunbar who created what she calls the magic number, and they call it Dunbar's ratio, and says there's a ratio between brain sizes and group sizes, and says that our brain is only able to hold a certain amount of people in our mind, in our care, consider these, and it's about 150. 150 is
I'm surprised it's that much.
That is, I don't know about you, but I'm getting way more than 150 comments every time something on reality television happens, and people want to say something about it. We are not, even if you have that idea, even if you have a great therapist that can work with you to challenge these
narratives. That
it's still not what the brain is designed to
no,
handle.
And people think, and they say this, and you signed up for, you knew what you're getting into. You actually said that. You actually did that. These contracts, they say we can misrepresent you. We can edit things out of order. We can defame you. We can do all this stuff. And you don't really know.
Decapitate you. That's always my favorite.
Yeah.
It always says that on the challenge one. It says decapitation is a possibility. I'm like, oh, okay. Sign on the dotted line.
Right. Anyone want to argue that this isn't the Hunger Games? What are we doing?
Somebody on my show lost a spleen.
Oh my God, how?
Yeah. And had to have surgery in Uruguay. That's not where I want to have my spleen removed.
No, it's not. Not at all.
I mean, I don't want to have it removed, period. But they can't even test. They'll say this is tested. Oh, we can imagine what they go through. But they don't know what it's like when you put money on the line. It is. You can't test for this. And I've even argued that, okay, let's go with the narrative that this is an experiment you're doing. Okay, let's say we're doing an experiment on these people. Sure, I'll go with that. There are elements to conducting an experiment that you have to follow. One being, when you leave, that you have to tell them what happened to them, and you have to debrief the participants. If somebody participates in an experiment, you have a debriefing process where you say, how'd it go? Is there anything else we need to do for you? Can we provide
Are there
you
side
any
effects?
assistance?
Any?
Yes.
Yeah. Crazy
and they're
stuff.
just like, done wrapping. Bye.
Yeah.
We'll see you.
Oh, you got a buy? I didn't even really get a buy. They were just gone.
Isn't that the weirdest thing when the cameras stop and all of a sudden, like, it's like they were looking at you and then they don't look at you anymore and don't care. It's the weirdest thing. You become like,
well, you're a product.
I can't even explain that feeling. And I've had it 11 times where I'm like, what? Oh, we're just.
Why did you keep going back? Was it the competition?
No, I think I honestly, I do think that, and this is what I also found in my research of what are the kinds of people who tend to be gravitated towards these environments. They're people who often have are comfortable. I shouldn't say comfortable, maybe more familiar with chaos. You're getting people who usually do have a trauma past, who usually have been in, or this is a make it or break it moment where I found on the real world, there were two groups of people who were trust fund kids who had somebody paying their way and they can afford to leave and go on a show and get paid $350 a week. That is what I got on the real world, $350 a week.
I got 1,000 for Love is Blind.
It's like,
so, adjusted for inflation, that might be less.
Yeah, like, what? Are you kidding me? And like, you want me to still pay for my apartment and all that?
Millions or you have the people, and billions they make off of you.
So much money. Or so you have the people who can afford it, have somebody paying for it, or you have the people who are like, I don't have any other option. I don't have a net. Maybe this will be a stepping stone launch pad for me. Maybe some good things will come. This is better than whatever I'm in. And so then they're very people who are vulnerable and easily exploited.
Yeah, I agree. And, one of the big things that I've taken away from this whole thing is I had done a lot of work on myself. I was very happy with where I was. I had a nice group of friends. I had, good boundaries with friends and family, all of that stuff. And what this did was kind of pop that bubble that I had built for myself and show me all the different kinds of people in the world, all the different people that are really interested only in chasing clout, that don't mind putting you down to elevate themselves, that have, narcissistic type behaviors and tendencies within how they behave. And, I have spent a lot of time post show and therapy trying to understand all these people. And then, the whole internet hate thing, like I don't understand that. Like I can be a little snarky back to some mean people.
Oh my God, don't waste your time.
I know it's a I will say that is habit.
I am one who, my co-host who's been on reality television tells me that. I was just like, how do you never, ever take the bait? You can't. That you are giving them everything they want when you do. It's the craziest thing. All people want sometimes is that attention, and they'll get it in negative ways, just like a little kid throwing a temper tantrum or the one in class who's like throwing something and the teacher then goes and talks to them.
I've never heard it explained like that, and that makes so much sense.
That is exactly what they're doing.
Wow. And that's a trauma response to not getting the attention that you wanted for doing good things. And
yes.
Wow.
Or getting I got goosebumps. Yes.
I know, me too. That's why I crossed my arms.
Yes. We're onto something there.
I've never thought of that. I've never thought of that before. There's your next study. Let's do that one where we can study to see the impacts that reality TV has had on viewers.
Yeah. Well, surprisingly, there are studies on that, and it's very bad. It also is really having an impact on males and body dysmorphia and body, like the body types that are featured on there. This is something that women have experienced for a long time, but now we're seeing a rise of that with men too. And there was an article that I just recently read that was on reality television and male body types.
I'm not gonna lie to you. That was a holdup for me. Like maybe I'm technically overweight. I don't even know. But
No, beautiful, amazing, and wonderful. Who cares what those stupid charts say? Do you feel healthy? Okay, then good.
I do. Well, that's I did think to myself when I was going on this show, because I've always been insecure about my body type, and it doesn't matter how much I work out or how well I eat. Like, I always have, stuff I don't like. And I thought about that. I'm like, am I really going to be comfortable, around potentially a bunch of dudes with six packs vying for, people that you can't see, but then when they do see, and that did cross my mind. I haven't even thought about that in a long time, but I can absolutely understand how that impacts men and then the kind of competitive athletic nature sometimes
Yes.
men have with each other too.
Absolutely.
Like, do you even lift, bro?
It's
like,
that.
Yeah.
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 I can remember this is a funny one of those stories, but I often am like one of the guys, and I would say that if you were to probably test my testosterone levels, they'd be through the roof, because there was we were on a challenge once, and all the guys were doing one of those, do you even lift, bro? Like having like a dick measuring contest, seeing how many pull-ups they could do on a door frame.
Oh my God.
3 or 4 of these huge burly dudes go, and then I'm like, I could totally do that. I go and I break the door jamb, and then they fine me for it. 4 dudes just did pull-ups on there that are huge, and it cracked when I did it, and then they gave me, it was like a $450 bill I got for that door frame. That was stupid.
They
so
definitely
I was like,
loosened that up for you.
Yeah. I'm like, what? That guy's twice my size. You're gonna find me? Oh, but that's what I get for participating in that bro culture. Ugh.
Got it. Yeah. It can be pretty toxic if you're not careful. Yeah. What do you think? So I recently saw, I can't remember what platform it was on, but I saw something about you saying that you won't do the challenge again. Yeah. Is it Rivals now, or what?
Yeah,
because there's no aftercare. So yes. I'm curious, what has your experience been like coming out of each of these shows that you've done, and your mental health and your wellness, and like, what would you like to see change?
Thank you so much for asking. I can't believe how unavailable aftercare is for at least, and here's the thing, there are a few shows, I'll say that, people go, oh, well, The Bachelor has, or this show has a therapist now. First of all, who hired the therapist? Are they following HIPAA guidelines? Who's signing the informed consent? Are they being recorded? Let's make sure, who are the therapists? I'd like to know, because people think that they're going to a therapist when they are interviewed in the reality television process. We had to complete
psych exams.
Yes, a psych exam.
We did too.
You do a huge one, the Myers-Briggs, or whatever it is. It's like
the 200 question.
Yeah, MMPI, Minnesota Multiphasic Personality Inventory. 500 questions to basically protect their ass and make sure that you are not delusional or going to harm others. And then it's reviewed by a psychologist, which is not a therapist. A psychologist can diagnose, a therapist, like mental, which therapists can too, but a psychologist is like deals in a totally different world than a therapist does. So we would meet with a psychologist who'd basically say, like, have you read the thing? Are you sure you want to do this? Yep. Not really talking to us like a therapist would.
No, they're trying to assess like
things.
What gets you angry, yes. what your reactions are, that's what they're trying to assess, your behaviors, not teach you coping mechanisms or tools to help you behave, and show up as yourself in these situations. And with the fact that they're on the payroll,
yes,
and they're feeding it back. And that's why one of my claims that I want an independent mental health counselor, professional therapist, whatever, on set. And
I don't know what else I can do to make myself more available for these people. I'm like, I have a background. Like, is it because I'm too angry? Is it because they think I'm too wound up?
Sometimes it's because they don't want to change.
I'm like, should I be less passionate about this? Because I'm here to help. I've even told production companies, look, you will have less people suing you. You don't want to get, this is a protection. I don't understand how they have medics on site with their little ambulances when we're doing nothing that would even require that.
First aid kit.
Yeah. We got a medic there. We got a legal team who's there to protect any like legal stuff that could happen. you don't have anybody who's going to be like a mental health like person who can be like, this looks like sexual assault, or this person's definitely depressed, or I think that person is self-harming in the bathroom. What has happened? Why is this so hard to get? I want to help the production companies not get sued by the people who are experiencing these things and then come after the production companies. This feels like
they don't have any like legal or labor or any type of standards. That's why like that would be an extra offense, and it goes beyond optics, and all they care about is optics. And the reason that it needs to be independent is because you can't have someone, first of all, feeding stuff back to producers. You can't have someone saying you're fine to film if that person's not fine to film. And my ex-wife had a panic attack in Mexico, no mental health support, nothing, just sent us in to keep filming. And
yeah,
so
they put the cameras in there. I had one too, and they sent the camera, and I walked off set, and the cameras followed me, and I was like, "What are you doing?"
Sorry. It's just so systemic. It's so systemic.
It's so bad, and then the worst is when people think, "Oh, you're whining because you like." I want people to.
I get that all the time.
That two things can be true. I could have a wonderful, I could have done some really cool stuff. I went really cool places. I got to do really cool things. I met my best friend on there. We've had a podcast for 8+ million years together.
Yeah, 700 plus episodes.
Yeah, we've been doing it for a long time. She is my best friend. So many great things. She met her husband on there. So many wonderful things have come out of that show. And there are things that can be improved so that we don't have ongoing effects, negative effects, and ruin many people's lives.
And it does. And, at the very least, I feel like I'm never going to be the same again. I mean, even now,
How could you be?
Yeah. I went and got a haircut today, and I'm walking back, and this person just stops. And again, this doesn't bother me, but it's awkward. And she's like, "Oh, hey, I know you." I'm like, "Hey," and she kind of looked like a friend from 5 years ago. And I was like, "Is that Lauren?" And I as she got closer,
weird?
she's like, "Yeah." And then I'm just like, "Hey," I was like, "Lauren, is that you?" And she's like, "Oh, well, I know you. You don't know me." But that's such it still sticks with you. And if you had a bad edit or people have said negative things about you, it's it's nerve-wracking. There were times I didn't want to leave the house.
I totally get that. And in my experience, it's been about 3 months of this post-filming recovery phase where you have to isolate. You don't trust people. You feel very suspicious that everybody is there are cameras everywhere, even though you know that there aren't.
Yes.
That it lasts for about 3 months where you are very. There's even strange relationships with food during that time because maybe your food has all been controlled. So you'll see there are. I could put together a packet of this is what to expect. These are these symptoms that you will experience, the course that you will probably go through after being on reality television. And there's absolutely no net.
That's a great point. And we have, so at the UCAN Foundation, we have Dr. Isabel Morley, who's a couples therapist and a psychologist. And she's actually working to put together a guide to help people before, during, and after. So maybe we could collab on that a little
Absolutely.
bit. Yeah.
I have a whole list of questions, 10 questions. They're what are the measures in place to support the mental health and well-being of participants during? How are participants prepared for the potential emotional and psychological challenges that may arise during the show? Are there mental health professionals or resources available to the participants throughout the filming process and beyond blah, blah, blah. I could keep going.
But what do you do? They lied about that with Kinetic and Love is Blind. They said we have rigorous protocols. We had 2 psychologists on set. I never saw them. They said, we give you, I think it was up to $600 each or $1,200 as a couple worth of therapy sessions. Couldn't get it. Begged for it at times.
Yeah. They told me that too of if you want a therapist, you're going to put the task of finding a therapist on the people who are experienced. Anybody who's looked for therapy, even when they're feeling okie dokie, is like, that's a 6-month process. You're like, forget it. I mean, I tried
and
to
there
get
was
family
no
therapy once.
availability.
There were 2 therapists in all of Colorado who were available.
Wow.
Like, what? 2? There needs to be somebody on staff to do this. Ah! I have to yell because nobody's listening to me when I talk regular.
I know you got to get loud, but that's the thing that's
Yeah.
just so frustrating is because it's difficult to find one. During COVID, it was
Yeah.
impossible. I think I reached out to probably no less than 25 couples therapists.
So sorry.
And it was just like we took recommendations, we tried everything. It was just impossible. It was almost impossible. It took us like 3-4 months to find one that had an opening.
Yeah, right. Let alone would be able to understand the situation, the circumstances. It's really crazy.
And that's the thing I think is very hard, and that I've realized coming out of all of this is nobody really gets it. And if you go through it, like, you kind of get it. And that kind of get it, it helps you like show up. And when I think to myself, back to like the worst days, I would tell myself, and this is all post show airing, I would tell myself, I'm like, it's okay that nobody gets this. It's okay that, like, my family didn't really understand. Like, people didn't take the separation or the divorce seriously, just because they saw it on TV and they think it was like not real. And it was very real. It was probably one of the most real, at least from our season. And it was just it was really hard because no one understood that, and people just looked at it as like something they saw on TV.
I'll tell you, like, I know for what it's worth, I looked at it and felt that pain and was like, this is not okay, especially at the reunion, at the, like, I mean, I can't even imagine what it would be like to go through a show like yours, and one that is so viewed. Like, everyone
It's the most watched reality show.
I mean, like, clients would talk about that with me in session. Like, they'd be like, "Oh my God, are you watching this?" Like, that is crazy. And
it's a cultural phenomenon.
It really is. And it must also be difficult when, like I said about my show, there are good things that can come out of there. There maybe are relationships where people meet and it's good, but that doesn't mean that there aren't really terrible things going on and ways that production companies are falling short and not providing what seems to me to be very basic support for the people who are giving them literally everything, every ounce of content.
And inviting them into your life, even though it's manufactured in so many ways. People still got to see my house. People still got to meet my family. And, it's crazy.
And your family didn't even sign up for that. That's the other thing is, like, that whenever I watch The Bachelor and they do the home visits, I'm like, this is abusive. This is not okay. Oh,
we have to do better. We just have to do better as participants, as cast members,
and
as
viewers,
and production. You also need to do better. You have an ethical and moral responsibility to take care of the human beings that you are making billions of dollars off of.
Yes.
Period. End of story. So I know we only got like a couple minutes here.
I could talk about this for forever.
I think we should do another episode.
I do too. I would love to do that.
Yeah, let's do that. So you've shared a lot about the change that you'd like to see, which I think is great. But before we go, I want to give you a chance to ask me anything that you're curious about.
I bet you've already answered this question, but I want to know what was the moment, or was there a moment that you can point to where you said, I have to speak out about this. I have to do, because as somebody who's been on reality television for so many years, there are hundreds of castmates that I've worked with, and this is a conversation that I have had before where we say, this is so messed up, yet we keep coming back and nobody does anything about it. So what was the thing that was like the straw that broke the camel's back for you?
It kind of snowballed. I actually decided at the end of last year I'm leaving the public eye. I took a long break from social media, and I turned down every interview opportunity, every catch up they wanted to do to see if I was dating or ask about my divorce. I just turned them all down. I didn't want to do any of them at the beginning of this year, and I started really reflecting on it and journaling more than I normally do, and trying to figure these things out because I was so like, what's wrong with me? Like, why can I had lost my marriage. I had lost my new family. I had lost, I opened myself up to all this public ridicule, from the beginning. And then again with the divorce. And, I shortly after there lost my job. Like everything just felt like it was happening to me. And so I had to step away, and I had to step away from all of it so that I could start to heal and process everything that had happened. And it was just this Business Insider article that came out that kickstarted this in April. She reached out, and I had just took me a little while to respond to agree to do it. But I just kept thinking about how, like, I didn't deserve this. Danielle didn't deserve what happened to her. And we certainly didn't deserve what happened to us, because they made a lot of money off of us, and they didn't care that we were struggling at all. And I was naive enough to think at the time, I'm like, well, they have to invest in us because, we prove it works. They have to care. And then they don't, because they wouldn't have cared if we showed up to that reunion coming in hot, having, been separated, even though we legally couldn't divorce, So it was just thinking about how I felt, but like a lot of it was really just like the way they treated Danielle, the way that what was happening with me and going on with me, and the fact that no one cared. And so I was just like, you know what, this has to change. We can't exploit people for entertainment. Like it's a barbaric gladiator type type of entertainment, and somebody has to do something. I don't want it to be me, but I am of the mindset that if someone should say something, why can't I say something?
Oh, I am so like, I mean, as we were talking before we recorded, but I, just want to share it on here. It is so validating and motivating and timely. And I am so glad that you are like persistent in this message. It really
Very
feels
stubborn.
like I love it. And I can see the times where there's like been pushback, and how you have stayed the course and are like you said, like, I don't want to do this, but like this has to be done. And I have this feeling in me that like it was all, like, in a way, all worth it. Like, I mean, who am I to label your life as all, like, that experience is all worth it? But it is not for nothing. I can definitely say that people, myself included, have benefited and will benefit in the future from the work that you're doing. I think it's so great that you only did one show and then were like, hell no, this is fucked up. Me, I was like, this is fucked up, but give me more. Like, that is like an abusive relationship. It is a cycle of abuse. That is 100% what it is on those shows where it's like a revolving door, and they give me just enough, dangle the carrot. Like, I can't get another job in between seasons because, like, who's going to hire me when I'm like leaving for another 3 months? But then whoop, they show up at my door like, hey, and they still call me. And, so I am really just happy to be connected with you and get to come on here and have you guys listen to me just rant and rave about this. And
but you're right, and I'm grateful
you.
for you too. I'm grateful that we got connected, and so many people, as I said before we were filming, were reaching out saying that we had to connect. So
it's great. It's so awesome.
I'm really glad.
And all I want to do is help reality participants know that that they are not alone, and that their feelings are so valid and so real, and
they have rights.
I can help them to feel more regular and feel like go through this process. And there are other therapists who can help and aren't being paid by the production companies to.
And I think that's just a great message right there. And I know we have We're up over 400 therapists in our network at the UCAN Foundation.
Great.
Yeah, so there's a lot of people. The vetting is hard because we are interviewing everyone before we match anyone, but it's really great. And I thank you for your advocacy and your support as well. So where can people find you?
Oh, okay. Well, if you are interested in checking out my therapy stuff, you can look at solutionsoc.com. That's solutions with an S and OC like Orange County. And I'm taking new clients if you're in the California area and do all telehealth. And if you want to check out my therapy themed podcast, it's called This Changes Everything. And I do it with Therapy Jeff, who you may know from TikTok and social
Therapy
media.
Jeff.
Love Therapy Jeff. It's great. And you can find that wherever you stream your podcasts, and check out my brainy, like nerdy girl podcast, the Brain Candy podcast as well.
Which I just listened to some of it earlier today, and I learned that we're starting to pay for returns again for online orders.
Yeah,
so,
can you believe that?
Yeah, that was.
We say it's a great podcast if you're looking for like stuff to talk about, like on a first date or at like a cocktail party and something like icebreaker convos. Like this is the podcast for you if you like that kind of stuff.
Love it. Highly recommend. All those links will be in the description too. And thank you again for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Of course.
We'll do it again soon. Thank you for joining us on this week's episode of Eyes Wide Open. If you enjoy the show, the best way to support us is by sharing or dropping a review. For more information and content, check out engagewithnick.com or find me on Instagram at nthompson513. Don't go through life blind. Do the work so you can show up in the world with your eyes wide open.